Hi there, Liam O'Gogan here. Welcome once again to another episode in the series of the research programme Does It Matter? This particular episode is a clarification and update episode recorded on the 6th of May 2016, further to my recent publishing of this video on YouTube called Part 1 of recording of the conversation with Majella Lysaght and the CSO. So there's a couple of things I want to address quickly in this video just to get a few minor corrections out of the way on discussing this with other people who've reviewed it. In two areas certainly I made the vocal equivalent of typos, where I presented at some point the pass mark for the enumerator test as 500. The actual pass mark was 300 marks out of a total of 500 marks. And the other areas where I had talked about 370 instead of 370,000 pages a day, which is what I heard Deirdre Cullen, the Chief Statistician of the CSO, claim on public radio, that for the next 6 months that the CSO would be processing 370,000 pages a day for scanning. And the relevance of that has to do with the type of technology you would need to be proficient with to do this, and the fact that these people ended up using snail mail and bits of paper and losing those bits of paper and my personal data and releasing that potentially into the public space. Now, the central core of the clarification I want to make in this video has to do with my, I believe possibly may have been a misinterpretation of the data that I was presented with. So I just want to go back to the email which was sent to me by Majella Lysaght on the 29th of April, the Friday the 29th of April at 13:56. Following with the receipt of that email, I made the recording, which is the subject of those videos, to speak to Majella. And this is the part that my stimulus for making the presumption was this. She stated in her email, "We have since met with the people involved," that's the candidates for the job of the Census Enumerator, "and they are understandably concerned that their private information was published and is still available on the internet. They have asked the CSO to remove their personal information from the internet." Now, on the basis of that, I made a presumption, and the presumption was that the CSO had met with these people, and with the time frames that were involved. This was a Friday. The information which I published was only carried out on Sunday the 24th of April. The response from the CSO and whatever connection we had to these people, it seems to me, was very rapid, probably within 48 hours of Monday. And I'm not sure, I couldn't work out how these people all got together, etc. But also then when I entered a conversation with Majella, and I just want to go back and play the sector of the recorded video that I have produced, and I want to explain to you where my possible confusion has emerged from. So this is an excerpt from essentially almost the first minute of conversation that I had with Majella at the outset of our conversation.
So yeah, just can I clarify? I mean, obviously you've written to me, so I just want to clarify. You said you've since met with the people involved. Are you talking about the people on the... Sorry?
Yes, the people involved, yes.
And did you meet with all of them?
Yes, and they have asked that data they've asked the CSO to act on their behalf and to ask you to take it down and to use whatever means we can to get that data taken down.
You did...
Okay, so again, I asked, did you meet with all of them? And she said, yes, we met with all of them and they asked to take this data down. Now, I've made the presumption from that, and I'm questioning that own presumption of my own at this point, that they met with all of these. So I presumed, perhaps foolishly or otherwise, that they met with all of them together. And the other thing I hadn't asked myself is, when she said we met, I'm not sure who we is. Remember, I'm actually an individual trying to face into this huge corporation, the CSO. I don't know who these people are. I don't know where these people are. Majella rings me from an 021 number, so I think perhaps she's in Cork. They seem to have an operation, certainly in Swords in Dublin. So I'm not actually sure who met with who. So again, the basis of the analysis that I did make the presumption that, I suppose it didn't specify who they were, and therefore when they say they, then I have to presume the corporate entity, CSO, are acting as one, that you don't have loose flyers all over the place. I presume that it was someone of central importance and some central seniority who met people. I don't know. I presume that this idea that there was a common meeting, and I wondered how to get everybody together. Common, I wonder, and I did question her later about how people, certainly 3 people at the bottom of the list, 2 who had their interview cancelled, the other person just didn't show. Why would they come to a meeting in general? So if it wasn't that they met them together, did they, and who met who? I mean, was it I don't know, like the people who interviewed who made the interview the job, are they in constant communication with the people who were selected? I'm not sure who is representing the information or position of the CSO to these people. But it is interesting that I see it was presented to me there, and they have asked us. So the whole thing is presented as if it's a collection of all of these enumerator candidate people. So on one hand, I'm being presented with this notion, and nothing that Majella did at any time dispelled my, if I'm wrong, the idea that she met them, or that again they, whoever they are, met them as one body. Now the other things, obviously, in the nature of this interrogation of the data and reflection on the experience through the research focal lens of the Does It Matter research program. I have very little access to data. I don't know what the CSO are doing. I get outcomes as presented from impacts of what the CSO are doing, but I don't know who they are. I don't know who's leading this, what intercommunication is happening. What I've been told by a senior internal investigator, a guy called Tony Downs, is that there was no internal documentation whatsoever, no internal correspondence, save that which I had and put into the public domain and the issue.com. So I'm wondering, how's this coordination all happening if nobody's actually recording or taking note or monitoring or organising this interaction with various people? I mean, when these meetings took place, were there any written records or any other records of what the people said? Who stimulated the conversation about asking the CSO to act on their behalf? It's almost like a union rep situation, a shop steward situation. What had happened actually here, just for clarity, the CSO have breached the data laws. I mean, the CSO have broken the law. I'm not necessarily saying that there's a apparently well-known solicitor, Antoine Delap, son of a apparently famous judge called Delap, who spoke on Radio na Gaeltacht on the Tuesday of the week ending the 29th, Friday the 29th, and who very stated quite clearly that as Gaelge, that the CSO have broken the law, and that their claim that they may have done it inadvertently is no excuse in law. So I'm not sure if the CSO, and Marcella in that recorded video talked about, we have put our hands up and come clean. So I'm not sure what they mean when they met these people, if they met them individually, if they met them as a group. When they met them, did they put their hands up and say, look, we have broken the law and breached your data? And was it that the people have said, because again, according to that conversation or the radio broadcast where that solicitor Antoine Delap stated quite clearly that individuals who had their data breached by the CSO had a right to seek relief from the CSO in that regard. So I'm not sure if those people said, look, we're making a complaint against the CSO, or did the CSO get into the driving seat and said, will you give us your approval that we will act as, the question is, will we be your plenipotentiary or will we be your advocate? And if why would they be wanting the CSO to advocate for them against something the CSO have done wrong to those people? So I'm just wondering what level of openness the CSO had with those people. If they met them as a group, was there a group dynamic there? If they picked them off one at a time, what was happening? And the other thing is, I did ask Majella, did she get approval from everybody in that body or just from certain people? This is important insofar as, from my understanding, there were 2 possible complaints made, or calls for a takedown made to YouTube. and from two individuals. Now, YouTube's rules are that they cannot get a takedown call from an organisation like the CSO. So somebody had to orchestrate telling people how to make their own personal complaints to YouTube. I don't think it certainly doesn't. It stretches credulity for me to believe that people of themselves have understood, oh yeah, I can go to YouTube and make a takedown breach call, etc. I'm not making a judgment on the digital competence or otherwise of these people, but I certainly spoke to many people who I consider to be quite digitally competent subsequent to that, and this was all, while we know that you can complain to YouTube, the process for doing so we would have no knowledge of whatsoever. There was two people, it wasn't everybody. And the other thing, in a following video that I'm going to do after this in relation to a conversation with the Data Protection Commissioner, as of yesterday I am being told that a single person has made a complaint to the Data Protection Commissioner. So again, I'm throwing out here the question of who's driving all of this. And the big question I would have put to the candidates when I wrote out to the candidates was, if they really want to know about the honour that's been carried out in this, they might ask themselves specifically when it was drawn to their attention that their data was breached, and actually go and review when exactly the CSO became cognizant of this breach of data. So I mean, that might actually show them. I'm making the projection here that the CSO's actions in this are not one of an honest broker, that in fact their whole action is designed to protect the CSO. Their interest in protecting people's data seems to me quite minimal, and certainly my evidence in relation to that is that my specific data has been allowed to wander off into the ether, and effectively nothing to my knowledge has been done. In that video, Majella alludes to the fact that she believes some internal investigation is going on, or some communication investigation is going on PUST. When pressed on that, she moves from a level of particular certainty to ultimately vacuity, of sort of half remembering something that she may have heard somewhere, of something she had read somewhere, etc. So up to this point in time, and I have asked what has actually been done, the best that I've been given is that it's a mystery to the Assistant Principal Officer of the CSO, Val McBride, and this will all be contained in the recordings of their conversations. And separately, that detailed discussions were had by a person called Marcella Joyce, the HEO, the Higher Executive Officer in that section, with the administration people investigating where my personal data went to. But unfortunately she kept no written record of that investigation. So if you're talking about levels of professionalism and traceability and auditability of data, you certainly won't find it in the recorded actions of the CSO officials. Anyway, that was just a point of clarification. Again, what I've tried to do is all of this stuff I'm doing extempore, with some little notes beside me here. I'm trying to manage a number of data resources into it. I will, because of my human frailties, limitations and my limited resources, etc., continue to make mistakes. In any area that anybody can point out to me where they are, please put them in the comments below. I will try and address these with further updates. My focus on this process is to create a record of a process of interrogation of a process, and that this hopefully could be used in for some educational purposes further down the road. So I'm going to try and stick with this detail and try and keep updating the data as necessary. Okay, once again, from Liam O'Gogan at the research project Does It Matter, thanks for joining me.